Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Anyway, so what's up?
Not much. I'm excited to talk to you. I listened to the podcast that Chris had sent over, and yeah, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's just one little section of my life. I started driving in 1990, so I've been in the trucking industry for a while, a little bit now, anyway. Went through a school, but still started old school,
Yeah, I
if
was going
that
to
makes
ask you because
sense.
the story on that podcast episode, it started basically you getting out of the truck and going over as a contractor to a weight. And that was kind of one of my first questions on the
Right.
list was how you got trucking in the first place.
I dated a truck driver. As a matter of fact, my papa apparently drove a truck. I don't remember that. My mom and my dad both told me that he drove a truck once upon a time. We're talking about like 89, 90, 89, I guess it was. I was a single mom with three kids living off the system. I had a little bit of child support I was getting from the ex, but once you get into that system, you're into that system. And I could feed my kids and live better if I didn't work than I did if I did work. And I didn't like that. I didn't want my kids brought up in that system. We all have a past. Thank God that one's way back there. Woke up one morning and after I had gone and done a month's worth of grocery shopping, and the kids had decided that they were going to make me breakfast, and everything in the fridge and the kitchen was all over the stove, the table. I didn't know how I was going to feed them, didn't know what I was going to do. So I shipped them off there to their dad and went through a truck driving school in Center, Alabama that's no longer there, and started trucking, try and figure out who I am and give my kids a better chance. Let me straighten myself out and give them a thing. And I fell in love with it. I was a natural. And I love the road. I ain't quit yet. Shattered both my wrists, and still I'm out here one way or another. Once a truck driver, always a truck driver. Once you get the diesel in your veins, it's not going to go away. It stays. And I ain't driven a truck since 2008, but 3 years to heal with my wrists, and I've been in a pilot car ever since.
So what kind of stuff
And
did you
all,
haul
but
when you were just getting started?
well, I was a chicken hauler, dead bird hauler. I started out with a company in Georgia called Blankenship Transportation. I went through that driving school in Alabama, was living with my dad in Georgia, and went to work for this company in Canton, Georgia. I'm not sure if they're still there or not. I've never looked it up. They had reefers and what I called sour milk hauling. We did a lot of craft foods and yogurts and sour creams and cottage cheese and all that kind of stuff, and the typical chickens and typical reefer stuff. That's where I started out, was hauling a reefer. Pulled that, outlaw chicken hauling and stuff. Second company I worked for was a little outlaw company in Russellville, Arkansas. I had old international cab overs, triple digit cab overs, pulling 45-foot no sliders and 48-foot trailers. I think 53 footers were just coming around and stuff at that time. So I didn't have a 53, but yeah, they'd load me up with chickens out of Arkansas, and I'd haul them somewhere in the southern region, no further west than El Paso. Once in a while, we might go to Ohio, but if you got north of about Missouri, Tennessee, Southern Virginia, you were out of our territory for the most part. But we'd run dead birds out and produce back, and all just as hard and fast as we could get it. Back in the day, I used to could go from Arkansas, haul chicken down to Orlando area, Tampa, something like that. Unload, reload tomatoes going to Oklahoma, either to Tulsa or Oklahoma City. I would haul them back to Russellville, Arkansas, and I would make that round to Florida and back to Arkansas in the same time it took somebody to go and make two drops in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. So I did those as hard and fast as I could do them.
Yeah,
And
back when
all, of course,
you could do it.
Yeah, back when a lot of people had triple digit trucks and you had paper logs.
Right.
Of course, back then they were a book stapled together, but you learned real quick how to pull the staples. You pull this,
Yep.
2 or 3 of them in your buy you a briefcase just so you can keep the extra log books so that you don't grab the wrong one. You only have the one up front. you
Yep.
know.
Yeah, a couple of the times the second logbook went out the passenger window as I was pulling over to the side of the road.
How long have you been in the trucking business?
Yeah, I grew up in it, so in the 80s,
Oh,
and then
okay.
I started driving for myself in the early 90s. So yeah,
Oh,
kind of same
sweet.
time period.
So
Yeah, it was the
you've been in it as long as I have, so you know what the trucking industry was like back then.
yeah, for sure. If you had a good safety director who knew when to look the other way and just slide those logs to the back of the file cabinet and make sure they never came back out, we're all good.
Stayed in the no file, the bad boy file. That's where I stayed most of my early years of trucking.
I was gonna say I had one safety director. I always wanted to catch up with him later. I just because he was one of those types of guys you were like, do you just not know what you're doing, or are you just looking the other way? Like you couldn't tell if it was deliberate or
Right, right.
not. But-
I, oh yeah, I've had some of those. I tell you what though, the best dispatcher I ever had used to be the owner of the company my husband's working for now, Christensen Transportation. I drove for him. Well, my third husband, Chris is my fourth. That's a long story. Um, I was driving for them when my third husband and I were married. They had company trucks at that time, and they only had maybe 150 trucks at max. Of course, this is back in the let's see, I went to Iraq in 2003. So the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. I drove for them when they decided to go from company trucks to lease operators. They offered us the truck we were driving, and it was a 379 Peterbilt with the 72-inch bunk and windows on the sides.
Mhm.
It was a nice truck, but by that time we had been a team in the thing for about 2, 3 years, so it had some miles on it. I couldn't talk my husband at the time, Bill, into doing the lease purchase, so we went to a company that had trucks leased on there. And then later on, they pulled their trucks, so we stayed with them where we were because still couldn't talk him into going back to Christensen. And then we got in Ogden, Utah, and that's where he tried to choke me to death. I threw his ass in jail, loaded the trailer 7 hours later, and all the ass. But anyway, the man, Gene Christensen, the man who started that company and all, he was a dispatcher. That's where he sat. He let his son, president of the company, he let his son run, do all that. But he sat in the dispatch because his philosophy was if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen in here. And he's right.
Right.
But he only took teams and a few select solo drivers. And if you were one of his solo drivers, you threw the logbook out the window. You just made it look good.
Yep.
Because I think that first month after Bill tried to choke me to death. But anyway, my husband and I Bill and I were working for it out in Ogden, Utah. He had a problem with alcohol, a lot of things, abusive marriage and stuff. He got drunk in the bar that's next door to the Flying J up there. And I don't know what he did, but he pretty much I drug his ass out of there before he got to a fight. And things went from bad to worse. He tried to choke me to death in a hotel room up there. And to this day, I don't know why I'm alive. I don't know why he quit squeezing, but I am. And I threw him in jail, refused to go to the hospital, just wanted to leave. I should have gone to the hospital because he messed my voice box up. Something got messed up in there. But yeah, Gene Christensen, even as a teen, he'd run Bill and I out of hours all the time. I swear that man knew how we could run a load better than we did. Because I would tell him, oh, that ain't enough time for us to get, well, just do the best you can, he'd say. Just do the best you can. And we'd be early. Somehow we'd get it done. That man knew what we could do better than we knew what we could do. That's a good dispatcher. That first month after Bill tried to choke me to death, 2 weeks after that, because the company did not fire him, and I was running into him on the road. I called Gene Christensen direct. And I said, Papa, I want to come home because we called him Papa Gene. I said, Papa, I want to come home. He says, well, I'm wondering why your ass ain't here yet. I was kind of like, well, I want to be back on your board. He says, well, you wouldn't be on anybody else's. And so I went back over there, and that first month, I run something like 16,000 miles as a solo driver. It took me about 3 to 4 weeks to fall on my face. He let me have everything I could because I couldn't sleep. I was having nightmares. And it took about 3 or 4 weeks. And I had a load out of Fargo, North Dakota going to Georgia. And I would drive an hour, hour and a half, and I'd stop, take a nap. And I'd drive an hour and a half, stop and take a nap. I had loaded that morning. That's the way that day went. The next morning, I was just like, I called him and told him, hey, look, I'm done. He says, well, you got 3 extra days on that load. He says, I figured you were about ready to bust. And it's like, how does this man know when I'm done? you know? But he knew, and he says, I want you to go out there. I want you to park that truck, set the brakes, and I don't want to see it move for 24 hours. Go to bed. And I did, and still barely got the load there on time because I was so burned out. And then I went to Iraq from working for them, but he was awesome. That was why I was excited when Chris said he'd go to work for him. He's not in the office anymore. He's too old, but his kids still run it.
He sounds a lot like my uncle. My uncle started trucking in the 50s and then he started his own company and then he was a dispatcher and stuff. He had about 50 trucks and he was the same way. Like when I was young and full of piss and vinegar, I bought my first new truck
Mm-hmm.
in 1999 and 1 year later, he told me all through it, he's like, son, you better slow down because this don't last and you're going to run it right out of yourself. And I'm like, whatever. Maybe that's how you feel when you're old like you, Uncle Larry, but I can go forever. And it wasn't 18 months later. I mean,
Oh
I ran
yeah.
hard. I had a lot of payments too to make that helps motivate you quite a bit. But, and I
Oh
came in
yeah.
there, I ran it right out of me that first go around. And I was like, I hate this truck, but I still got 3.5 more years of payments. But he was right.
Mm,
He knew how all the stories played out. He tried to tell you, but most of them I had to go find out how the story
well,
ended for myself.
we're all young bucks. We're big, bad, and bulletproof. We can do anything.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like all the old timers telling me, don't be jumping out of the back of them trailers and come out of the truck proper and this, that, and other. You'll regret it one of these days. And
Hmm.
I came out of my truck face first on that Peterbilt and with wet metal. You know how Peterbilt's got them old 379s and the metal steps.
Yep.
You come out and you got leather kickers on, and my foot hit that and slid, and I raked them steps down my back.
Yep.
And
Yep.
was winded, barely crawled myself back up in the truck. But I had a big old raspberry bruise from my waist all the way up between my shoulder blades and about as wide as my back was. And I still loaded the trailer and rolled up towels and put them under each shoulder so my back wouldn't hit the back of the seat. And that was in Memphis, and I hauled that sucker to California. Right, met up with a couple other Christensen drivers on our way. I think there was about 5 of us. Of course, you got to remember this is back in the old days. There was about 5 of us come out of the Flying J there at Kingman, Arizona.
Yep.
2 hours later, we were sitting in Barstow, California. That was a hell of a night.
That's some trucking.
With the 5 of us, it's like step to the right, we're coming through. Triple digits across the Mojave Desert. Those trucks, I think about the fastest we could get them. That it was about 106 was about as fast as they go, and all 5 of us, right down through there. I had that big old raspberry bruise on my back. I got to hurting really bad. We ended up having to. This is one of those cool things, and you started when I did, so you get it. I got to hurting real bad, and I guess I zoned out fighting the pain. And because I was leading the pack running the front door, I usually did, and had one of them come around me and come up front, and they slowed me down. Finally got my attention. I guess snapped me out of it, and because I just white line and I was hurting, and pulled off to the shoulder, and they got on the radio, and a prime driver team they got on the radio and asked if somebody could drive one of the guy's other trucks. My best friend Jack was part of at the time was part of the group. So he climbed in my truck and he drove my truck and got a prime team offered, and the husband got out and drove Jack's truck and his wife drove the prime truck and just had to wait on her to get there when she got there because he got in the truck and them boys went to triple digits again. And I mean, well, we weren't a half hour out of Barstow at that time at that speed, but we did all that in 2 hours. Was with stopped and had an ambulance out. They had called an ambulance already. All this kind of stuff. It was about 2.5 hours. Even dealing with that, we sat in Barstow, and then Jack called the office and told them what was going on. The rest of the guys went on down to LA and dropped their loads, and they parked his truck beside mine, and he gave me a painkiller and tucked me in, locked my truck up, went got in his, and sat there and babysat me for the night and all. But it was lots of fun. Can't do
It
that
was,
nowadays, but it was lots of fun. Trucking was lots of fun back then. People talked on the CB. You had fun.
yeah. I
It's
mean,
not
that's why
like
I
it is
started this
nowadays.
this podcast, right? Because when I'm thinking back on things like that was fun, right? The '90s before we had cell
It,
phones, and it was just a CB radio.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I'm a bit of a radio snob and all because I got this is a story for you. Back, I hadn't been driving a couple of years. Ran a load out to California and met this guy. He's from California, divorced. His wife and kids lived up in Oregon. I was divorced. My husband or ex husband and kids lived in Arkansas. We would meet up every time I went to California. He'd always show up at the truck stop with a single red rose. We'd go to dinner, movies, or have a date. It was one of those things. His ex-wife and kids in Oregon and mine in Arkansas. It just wasn't going to work, you know.
Right.
But he bought me. I was running a little Cobra 29,
Yeah.
typical newbie in the truck type thing, and Blue Frog was out there. I don't know if you remember him. He had a camper he set out there. It's back when you had the T8, I think the one they call the East, and then the 76 was across the street, and you had the big O bingo truck stop. Well, the small bingo truck stop on the other side of the interstate, on the north side of the interstate. There at Ontario, California. And Blue Frog used to sit outside the 76 over there and work on CBs in his big old camper trailer. Well, the guy I was seeing and all, he bought me my first Galaxy 33 radio and put it in the truck. And of course, cell phones, the back then were biggest suitcases. If you had one,
Yep.
you had to be
Cost a
rich to have
fortune.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like every day bought me that Galaxy, and every day we went to the high side of channel 22 and would try and chase Skip and catch each other on the radio. Succeeded sometimes, but that was part of the fun of it. It was cool. It's like meeting somebody and running with them down the road, and you just change channels, go to an upper channel, lower channel, try and catch each other and catch Skip rolling. I mean, what else you gonna do when you're going down the road? You
Yeah.
gotta have something to do. And if you wanted to, you could pick a fight.
Right. There was plenty
Okay,
of
oh,
that.
I tell you, well, you can imagine being a woman in the early 90s out there running the roads by myself, what I had to put up with. Everybody assuming I made my money, in my legs in the air on the back row of the truck stop parking lot. But
Right.
that wasn't me. I was running the loads up and down and stuff. Oh, you need to be at home taking care of man. You need to be home doing this. You need to be home. And well, that's fine. You need to be home too, taking care of your old lady so the 17-year-old neighbor boy ain't getting the thrill of his life. You know, usually most of the guys, when they get on there and start that, I know that they're just bored. They're looking for a fight. Some of them might actually mean it. They're just trying to stay awake, entertain. So, you come back with them 90% of the time, it doesn't end up being an argument. And if you're going the same way, you end up running 2,000 miles with them bullshitting.
Right.
That's how it would start out. I was coming out of, was it I loaded? Over there in New Jersey or something other. Jack Griffey, this is also back when I was trucking with Christensen. Jack was at the TA at Wheeling, West Virginia, there on 70.
Yeah. Hole in the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, We had met up there and we'd both gotten loaded. We gotten loaded in different places because we always, you know, through dispatch and this, that, and the other kind of stuff, try and keep up with each other and all. But stopped there. Okay, so this was after Bill and I split because I was running by myself. Anyway, we started out Wheeling, West Virginia, just me and Jack, about 6, 7 o'clock at night. We're gonna make it across Ohio at night. Less cops. Back when it was 55 for big trucks and the fours could run 75, and how stupid that was.
Mm-hmm.
But we come out of that TA there, the two of us, and talking on 19. And of course, woman on the radio, that just picks up other people. When we start going, and our trucks only run about 72 miles an hour at the time. And that's what we're doing, 72 miles an hour across freaking Ohio. Me in the lead to start out with. Jack, I'm trying to remember if Jack was heavier. I know we yo-yoed back and forth in the hills. One of us would make it to the top of the hill, and the other one would beat us to the beat the other one to the bottom of the hill. You know how that goes.
Yep.
And we just slowly start picking up people. By the time we got to Columbus, Ohio, we had a big old long line back there. We lost some there, gained some there. I was no longer in the lead. It was a big old yo. We worked trucks through that wanted to go faster or whatever. Not that there were too many wanting to go faster than what we were across there. But by the time we come out the other side of Columbus and hit the first curve back there, I looked back in my rearview mirror and could not see the end of the line of trucks. We from Columbus all the way to Indiana line, we kept hearing about these two bears in the middle at the four working hard. By the time we got, they were gone. We were aware of them, this, that, and other. And about 10 miles away, we were about to 14, 15 and asking about it. It's like, I don't know, they ain't there now. So we keep on trucking, never checked up or nothing. Bailed off that first exit and went to the Petro there at New Paris, Ohio. Pulled into the fuel pumps to get fuel, and that's where we were going to crash for the night. And as we were pulling into our parking spots, we were hearing that those two bears were back out there at the four. They just left. I bet we had 100 trucks or more. It was just the prettiest thing seeing all them lights going down the road together, nose to tail, trucking it up, you know. And everybody having their own conversations and the fun and nobody argued about nothing being caught in the back. Everybody worked together, and trucks rotated positions and this, that, and the other because of the hills and how they pull or how they fly off. It just worked. It was an
Yeah, it was
awesome
fun
night.
when. Yeah, it's like I don't
Yeah.
know. You lose like time disappears in those moments, right? And there's like a symphony, a harmony that happens. It's just fun. Well, one thing you mentioned on the other show that it made me write it down to talk to you about it because you said when you were talking about your training in Houston before you went over to Kuwait that nothing
Oh,
they
yeah.
trained you for compared to the real experience. And I was curious about what things you meant by that.
Well, I mean, in every aspect almost. I mean, I come from a military family, so I wasn't stupid about that kind of stuff in the living. I've been educated, and one of my best friends at the time, Earl, he's prior military, and my brother's Navy, and so I got sat down and talked to before I went down there. The trucks, the lifestyle, you don't have flat mirrors on the trucks. We got a big old flat mirror, and then you have a convex mirror under it for helping you see them blind spots when you're backing up. What would have been a flat mirror on our trucks here was a convex mirror on those over there. So it really messed with your back and stuff a lot because there was a lot of guys that didn't know how to back up with the convex mirror. Now, me, if there's a mirror on the truck, I'm going to use it, by God. And so when I was backing up and stuff, I learned to use those convex mirrors on the bottoms. And some of them guys just had a hell of a time learning how, figuring out how to back up. Some of them couldn't back them trucks up, save their lives. Give them a flat mirror and they were fine, but them convex mirrors messed with them. That and, of course, they were cab overs, setback axle cab overs and stuff. A lot of those guys. And in the shifting, you shifted those things like you do a car here. You mashed the clutch every time you shifted it.
Hmm.
They didn't have them synchronized like you do here. Now, I did learn how to float them.
Of
I'm
course
an
you
old
did. You
school
had to
truck.
try,
Of
right?
course. Who wouldn't?
Right.
You know, you used to driving around and having anywhere from 13, 15, 18 speeds and stuff. You go over there and they give you this little thing that's, it's like, what the hell is that? That's supposed to be a shifter. you know? But yeah, you mashed the clutch every time you shifted it. They were, all those European cab overs were like that. Mercedes, Volvos, Mans, and Ivecos, whatever they call them. Some of them were semi-automatic, so you had a little rocker switch there and stuff. You just rocked it forward or rocked it back to do this, that, and the other, or you could put it in automatic, which was not like automatics here. It was weird. It wasn't a full automatic. You couldn't just put it in gear and go. And changing tires. Nowhere did they tell us we'd be changing our own tires on the side of the freaking road. It'd take a crew to do it, about 4 or 5 people, but we'd change our own flats over there in Iraq. We could do it in 30 minutes without power tools.
Hmm.
So I had a pretty good crew over there, but there was a lot of stuff, it's a big culture shock. I knew I was going to get shot at sooner or later, but it's different. People can tell you and they can describe it and they can tell you their own personal experiences or whatever, but you don't really get it until you do it. There was the life, the risks. They tried to downplay some of, they tell you it was dangerous, but they downplayed the danger and stuff. Sat in Houston for 5 weeks. Wasn't supposed to be there that long. Sat there because we couldn't get flak vests because there was a shortage of flak vests at the time. And I sat down there for 5 weeks. We did all of our orientation. They talk about banana suits and how to put our face mask on and clear them and all that kind of stuff. They teach you all that stuff and they tell you, but I don't think they really spend enough time letting the guys know exactly how dangerous it was because there was a lot, and of course, nobody knows. You don't know if you're going to be a warrior or a coward when the
Right.
bullets start flying until the bullets start flying. And just because you were one or the other the first time the bullets flew doesn't mean you're going to be that way any other time they fly. And all, and I've seen some of the bravest guys, prior military and stuff, the first time they got bricks thrown at them or rebar through their windshield or got shot at, they were on the first thing smoking coming back to the States. Nothing against them. It's just, everybody has their limits of what they're willing to go play Russian roulette with their life with. And that's what you're doing over there when you
Right.
drove over there. Every time you went outside the wire, it was a cast of the dice as whether you're going to get shot at and go in the next gate alive or in a stretcher or dead. But of course, I'm an adrenaline junkie, so yeah, you know how that goes. but but yeah, I mean, it's just different. I don't think, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know if they even tried to teach us to get into our heads, ingrain into us how dangerous it was. I don't think a lot of us wouldn't have listened.
Right.
And all the excitement, the fear, the potential. I don't know how most people went over there, but I went. I was running away from the ex husband who tried to choke me to death. I thought, I go over there and make a bunch of money and come home, buy my own truck, and life would be better. That kind of dream and stuff. And there's just all sorts of hopes and expectations. But also, I was going to do for somebody else's son and daughter what I knew somebody would do for mine because mine was going to go in the military. He's talking about when he graduated high school, he's going to go in the military. Been doing that since he was old enough to walk and talk. And with the family I have, it was my way to serve my country and support our troops. So I
Right.
didn't go just for the money. Of course, like I said, and to be perfectly honest, coming out of Bill trying to choke me to death and being where I was, I didn't really care if I lived or died. I went over there and figured one way or another, my life is going to get better, my life is going to get worse, but something's got to change. And, it's a hell of a deal to run halfway around the country to a war zone to find yourself. But that's basically what happened. I learned more about who I am, where my limits are, what my weaknesses are, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, just all the way around. And even coming from a very patriotic family like I do and all, I think I came home more patriotic. One of the criticisms on reviews on my book was that it was too patriotic. And I'm like, how can you be too patriotic? But yeah, I went over there to run away from the ex and found a sense of purpose. You know, everybody wonders why they're on the face of the planet and what's their purpose and will they make a mark or will they do this or will they do it? Well, you ain't got to be rich and famous. You ain't got to be in the news to make a mark on the world. Just being you can make a mark on the world and can change parts of the world. Going over there did that in lots of ways. It just, life becomes a little, I'm going to put it this way. For me, life became more peaceful, maybe a little less lonely or a little more lonely. But when you figure out who you are and what you want out of life, and you set a goal and a plan to try and get there, you start clearing out the dead weight. And I've changed a lot. I'm not the same person I was before I went to Iraq. And I came back with a code of honor, integrity, and respect. Not that I didn't have it before, but ingrained in me to the point that I think sometimes it might not be healthy. I have a loyalty streak in me. I have a loyalty streak in me that can be detrimental to me at times. But that's how I was raised. People who mean something to you. The guys over there, once they ran in my convoy and was under me after I made convoy commander, once they ran it, they were my guys. I don't care where they went after that. They were my guys, and if they needed anything, they came to me and asked. Hey, Cindy, can you find this? Hey, Cindy, can you do this? There's not a lot of that nowadays. People are too much about me, my life, and getting it down the road. And that doesn't mean you have to take the whole world on, but you can take on and do the best you can in your own little circle. And if you treat people with respect when you first, to a certain amount of respect when you first, I mean, you can't give them everything yet. They ain't earned it. You got to earn a little bit of all of that, but some of it should be given freely until proven that you can't. And people have forgotten that nowadays. But I like doing interviews. I like talking about trucking. I don't mind being on your show whenever you want. I love to help and give you ideas and help in the background. If you want that, I'm cool with it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Well,
Well, I'm going to let you go because I need to call my husband back.
yeah, my wife popped her head in here one time, so I figure I
Just
better go figure out how I'm going to help solve dinner.
have fun with that. I'm going
Well,
to
you
go
have a
back
great
in.
night.
I'm glad you were still able to talk, though.
Yeah, it was a fantastic time. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Have fun with this. I think it's cool.
Well, have a great night, and we'll catch up somewhere or another soon.
That'll work.
Thanks, Cindy. Bye bye.
All right, hon. Bye.